Hi, you guys. This is Mrs. Bullen with your notes for 5.2, and we're going to be learning the slope-intercept form today. So this is something that you might have seen before with rate of change and start value and all that, but we're going to go over it all again. So just as a little review, we're going to start with the warm-up. So evaluate this function when x is 0 and also when x is 3. So we have two separate problems. We're going to first plug in 0. And so we would go -2 times 0 plus 5. Well, that's equal to 0. 0 plus 5 is just 5. So then when we plug in f of 3, right, the second value is x equals 3, we get -2 times 3 plus 5. -2 times 3 is -6. When I add 5 to that, I get -1. So ideally, what I'd like for you guys to do is try the problems first and then press play to get the answer. So pause me, try problems 2, 3, and 4, or try one at a time, but make sure that you're trying the problems first and then checking your answers and correcting them if you need to. Okay, question number 2, we're going to graph this one. So remember, we can, when it's written in standard form like this, when there's something x and something y equals a number, we can graph using the intercepts, and that's by plugging in 0 for the opposite letter. So if I plug in a 0 for y, I use what I call the cover-up method, because when we put 0 in there, that part cancels out. 4 times 0 is 0. So if I'm adding 0, I just get the 2x. So I'm going to write 2x equals 8. I'm going to divide by 2. So x equals 4. That's the x-intercept. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the y-intercept. I'm going to plug in 0 for x and see what the value of y is. So I have a positive 4y is equal to 8. Divide by 4, so we get y is equal to 2. So I'm going to go to positive 2 on the y-axis, and then I just connect the dots. Okay, question number 3 says fill in the table to represent a linear function. So this one's a little bit tricky, but if I went from here to here, if I went up by 20, and then during that time I went up by 20, and I went over by 20, you guys, because this is the x. So in the x direction, I went 20, and then in the y direction, I went up by 12. If I reduce that, I know I could divide by 4, so 3, 5. Every time I go up by 5, over by 5 in the x direction, I go up by 3 in the y direction. So I'm going to go up by 3, which would be 2, up by 3, which would be 5, up by 3, which would be 8, and then up by 3, which would be 11. So that's the pattern on that one. And then question number 4, we are going to graph x equals -1. Remember, this is different than an x-intercept. This means that x always equals -1. So I find -1 on the x-axis, and then I pass through it with a vertical line. Okay, we are going to go over the notes today. So this was kind of a little bit about what we're going to do today, looking at the slope and the change in y versus the change in x. So here we go. In our notes, the very first thing that you guys need to learn is what a slope is. So hopefully you guys have seen this a little bit in middle school. I know that was a while ago, so if you forgot it, it's okay. But basically, maybe you've heard it said rise over run. Well, that's how much y is changing over how much x is changing. So the rise is how far you go up or down. And then if it's positive, you would go up. If it's negative, you go down. The run, we're always going to go left to right, like we're reading or writing, okay? So, for example, from this point to this point, I went over and then I went up. We always put the up and down on the top. We put the how far over on the bottom. So if it's written in this equation, y equals mx plus b, this is what's called slope-intercept form, okay? Because it tells us two pieces of information. M is the slope, and b is the y-intercept, okay? And so that's written out right here. And we can quickly use that information to make a little graph. So let's try some problems and you guys will see what I'm talking about. So this one says describe the slope of each line, then find the slope in the y-intercept. So the slope of this one, first of all, I would say the line's going up. Remember how I said we're always going to look at it like we're reading or writing, like we're going left to right. So this one, as we go left to right, the line is going up. And so we would say that the slope is positive. Okay. And so M stands for slope. You could write the word slope, or if you don't want to write out the whole word, we could just put the M. And then we're going to count how far did it go up. Let me switch to a lighter color here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So it went up by 4. And then we're going to see how far it went over. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So over by 6. So remember, when I write the slope, I always put the up or down component on the top. So it went up by 4, and then it went over by 6. And if you ever forget, read this fraction, 4 over 6. Okay, we say over in front of the one that's on the bottom. Okay, so let's do another one. Oh, I didn't do the y-intercept yet. Okay, so then we just need to look really quickly, where does it go through the y-axis? Here's y, and that value is 1. So I would say, you could either say b equals 1, or you could say the y-intercept equals 1. You should not say y equals 1, either b or y dash int, okay? Or you can write out the whole word y-intercept if you want. Question number 2, we have to do the same thing, okay? So remember, anytime the value of x is 0, that's going to be our y-intercept. So if the value of x is 0, that right there is the y-intercept. So the y-intercept would be 2. Okay, now we're going to look at the pattern. So in the x direction, I went over by 2, over by 2, over by 2, and they were positive 2. So I was going to the right. And then let's look at the y direction. I went down by 3, down by 3, down by 3. So if I'm going to say what the slope is, I'm going to say, well, it's going down by 3 every time I go over by 2. Okay, and then if we're describing the slope of it, we can look at the outputs, and the outputs are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So we would say, if I wanted to describe the slope, I would say that it is negative. And it's important that we also look, as x gets bigger, y gets smaller. So that's a negative slope. Anytime they go in opposite directions, it's a negative slope. So if y was getting smaller, if x was getting smaller and y was getting bigger, that would also be a negative slope. But a positive slope is when they go the same direction. Okay, question number 3 says find the slope and y-intercept and then graph it. This is, let me just tell you, we're not going to really do very much math at all except for counting. Okay, so here's the slope. So m equals 3, that's the slope. And then this right here is the y-intercept, b equals negative 4. And so if you guys want, you can use the words slope and y-intercept, or you can use the letters that represent those. Either one is fine with me. And then we're going to go ahead and graph those. So for the y-intercept, we're going to put it at negative 4. And then the slope is 3. Okay, well, in these problems, we had a fraction, right? And this one you probably should have reduced to 2/3. We had a fraction because we always need to know how much are we going up for how much are we going over. Well, if I had to turn that one into a fraction, how could I write it as a fraction and not change the value? I could always write any number over 1 because that doesn't change the value of it. 3 over 1 is the same thing as 3. So having it as a fraction will help us to graph it a little bit. So I'm going to start at my y-intercept. B is where you begin, and m is how you move. So we're going to go up by 3, 1, 2, 3, because it's positive. And then we always go left to right, like we're reading or writing. Okay, and you can keep doing that pattern if you're not super great at drawing straight lines like I'm not. Having more points kind of helps a little bit. Okay, question number 4, review from the last section. Remember, if there's no y there at all, We're going to graph it first, and then we'll see if we can answer those questions. Okay, so x equals 3. So 1, 2, 3. Here is our line. It passes through the x-axis at 3. Okay, well, what's the y-intercept? There is none, right? So you could put y-intercept none. Okay, and then slope, what we would say is that it is undefined. Okay, because you could keep going up and up and up and up and up forever, and you're never even going to go over it all. Okay, next problem, number 5. So let's look at that one. So again, here's the slope. So I could write m equals or slope equals either one. Slope equals -1/2, and the y-intercept equals 2. Again, you could have used m right here or b for the y-intercept. Okay, so I'm always going to begin on the y-intercept because that's where I know where it crosses. Y equals 2. I know for sure that that point is on the line. Then from there, I'm going to do the slope to find some more points. So I'm going to start with this right here, which tells me to go down by 1. Okay, if it's positive, you go up. If it's negative, you go down. And then we always go to the right. So down by 1, over by 2, down by 1, over by 2. Okay, here's the exception to that. If you want to get a few more points, you can do it in reverse. So if we go up by 1, we could go to the left by 2. So you can do that, but that's only if you also reverse the top number. Okay, so there's our line on that one. Question number 6. We're going to go ahead and graph this one. Again, m or slope equals 3/2. B or y-intercept equals -5. I want you guys to see that the b and the y-intercept are interchangeable. Slope and m are interchangeable. Those mean the same thing, okay? So I'm going to begin at -5, and we always begin on the y-axis. And the reason why is because this is the value when x equals 0, right? Remember the cover-up method from last time? So y equals, sorry, my finger's a little bit too fat. I have to use my pinky on there. No, still too fat. Use the pen. So if I put a 0 in for x, that part goes away, right? Because we're timesing by 0. And then so y equals -5. So I'm going to put y equals -5 right here. That's the y-intercept. And then this is how I'm going to move. It's positive. So I'm going to go up by 3. 1, 2, 3, over by 2, up by 3, over by 2, up by 3, and I'm off there we go. Okay, now we're going to work on your homework. We're just going to do the odds. You have to do all the problems, but I'm going to give you the solutions to the odds, and hopefully that'll help you figure out the even problems. But remember that you are responsible for this entire assignment. Just do your best on those evens. Okay, question number 1, it says in exercises 1 through 3, describe the slope of each line and then find the slope and y-intercept. So first of all, I'm going to describe it. I'm going to say, oh, look, it's going down. So it is going to be a negative slope. Okay, so m equals how much did I go down by and how much did I go over by? So I went down by 2 and I went over by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, just as a reminder, you guys should be using this as a way to check your answers. To make sure that you're learning this, you guys should try the problems first and then hit play on the video to see if you were right. Okay. So letter B or the y-intercept, you just have to see, well, where did it cross through the y-axis? And this one we could find exactly. I'm just going to say we're going to put about 1.5 right there. We're just going to get close on that one. Okay, question number 2. First of all, we're going to describe the slope. Well, this one's going up, so it would be positive. You guys finish that one on your own. Remember, count how far up, how far over, and then find where it crosses on the y-axis. Okay. Question number 3. If x is always equal to 0, just let's think about what that looks like. X always equals 0. So this one's kind of weird because it says that the y-intercept is 0, but every single point is 0. This one's kind of weird. Okay, so this slope would be undefined. And it does hit the y-axis at 0, but it also hits the y-axis at every single other point. So I don't think that we would really say that this one has a y-intercept. I think we would say none, or there's an infinite number of y-intercepts, because technically it's on the y-axis at every single value of y when x equals 0. Okay, and then, so maybe y-intercept, you could either say none, or you could say like every point. I'm not sure how that one is in Canvas, but I'm sure you guys will figure it out. Okay, question number 4. We're going to skip because that's an even problem. I'm going to skip. You guys are going to do it. But remember, this is where we begin, and this is how we move. Remember, if it's not a fraction, you can always put it over 1. Okay, question number 5, we're going to graph it. Y equals -4. So here's -4 on the y-axis. And remember, if y always equals -4, no matter what x is equal to, it's going to be a horizontal line. Okay, so the slope of that would be, imagine trying to go skiing or snowboarding or skateboarding or cycling or rollerblading or anything on something that's like flat like that. We would say that has no slope at all. You're not going climbing up a hill. You're not going down a hill at all. We would say that the slope of that is 0. Okay, so it does have a number. That number just happens to be 0 because you're not going up or down. You're just, if you were like skiing and you didn't have poles or anything, you would just stay in the same spot. And then the y-intercept, I should have put B since I put M, but the y-intercept on that one would be -4. Okay, and so this one is slope. All right, question number 6, you guys try that on your own. Just something to think about, if there's no number at the end, you can consider it as having a 0 at the end and then over 1 for the slope. Okay, question number 7. Let's graph this one together. So the slope, or m, is equal to +4 over 1. And you guys, that x never goes on the slope. What's attached to the x tells you what the slope is, but that x is not part of your slope. So notice that every time I'm writing it, the slope is a number. Okay, and then the y-intercept is equal to -3. So I'm going to start at -3, and then I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and over by 1. Up 1, oh wait, I just moved to the wrong one, huh? Sorry, you guys. Question number 7. Well, I just gave you guys a hint on that one. So this one right here, I'm sorry, I was getting sidetracked. So this one right here, we would say the slope is -2/3, and the y-intercept is +4. And so we're going to start at 4, and then we're going to go down by 2, over by 3. And we're going to connect the dots right there. Okay, sorry about that. I always make all these mistakes as soon as the video is rolling. Anyways, you guys make me nervous. Question number 8. This one you guys are going to try. Remember, this is where you begin at -2 on the y-axis, and then this is how you move up 3 over 4. Question number 9 says, describe and correct the error. So they're saying the slope is 3. Okay, that sounds good. And they said the y-intercept is 6. What are they missing? I hope you said, well, maybe not out loud, but I hope you said -6. The y-intercept is -6. So make sure you guys correct that. Okay, they didn't use the proper sign for the y-intercept. Okay, question number 10, again, you guys are going to be doing on your own. But as you guys are thinking about it, think about where a positive y-intercept would look like and a negative slope would look like. So which one, this says just determine which of the equations could be represented by each graph. So this one has a positive y-intercept and a negative slope. So this one has a positive y-intercept but a positive slope. This one has a positive y-intercept and a negative slope. So this one could be letter C. And you notice, you guys, that there's 4 choices, but there's 8 of these. So just Do your best and see which ones could match up with which other ones. This one I know has to pass through 0, right? So that one isn't one of those options up there. This one, positive slope with a negative intercept. So negative intercept, positive slope. Okay, you guys get the picture. Just go through each one of these and see positives or negatives if it could be one of those pictures. All right, that will do it for our 5.2 notes, and I will see you next time.